Hello, and welcome to the 16-ounce canvas, the Art of Craft Beer podcast. My name is AJ Kierans, and I'll be your host through this adventure. Each week, we will be featuring artists who have worked on some of the great imagery and labels in the craft beer industry. We'll interview them about their art, how they came to meet the brewery, their aesthetic, and just see where it takes us. So we're really excited that you've taken the time to download or stream or whatever it is that brought you to us. We have a nice website for you to check out, 16ozcanvas.com. That'll be the hub for all the information. We'll have transcripts and images of the different artists and the imagery. Get some sketches. It's really going to be exciting. So again, you're listening to the 16-ounce canvas, the Art of Craft Beer. Don't hesitate to reach out. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and all the other fun social sites. If you got some cool pictures, new labels, or you want us to check out some artwork, hell, maybe you're an artist. We'd love to meet you. Throw up the old hashtag 16OZCanvas, 16OZCanvas. We'll tie that into the website. We'll build ourselves a nice little community. And who knows, maybe we'll have a beer together down the line. But this is our inaugural episode 1. We are very excited. It's been a long time coming. I want to thank everybody for all their support and folks behind the scenes who help make this possible. So here's our first episode. We're going to feature Dan Blakeslee. Dan is responsible for what I feel is one of the most iconic images in the craft beer industry, the Mount Rushmore, so to speak, Heady Topper. So we caught up with Dan recently while he was in South Carolina. Dan is a musician. He's been creating, traveling, seeing the world for the last 20 plus years. So we caught Dan down in South Carolina as part of his winter tour. He was working on some artwork, taking in the sun, and getting ready to hit some gigs up. So here we go. The first of many. Sit back, relax. This is Dan Blakeslee on the 16-ounce canvas, the Art of Craft Beer. Enjoy, my friends.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. I'm pretty excited.
Totally.
So the premise is, I'm big into craft beer, and I just think that the way things have gone recently, with the advancement of canning and just really the breweries' explosions over the last couple of years, that one of my favorite things is the artwork. Sometimes it proves not to be the best tasting beer, but at least visually, it looks pretty good before that moment. And
right,
I think that what you've done is pretty amazing. I think that you probably at the time didn't think how much of a kind of epic can that would be, the Heady Topper can. So I'm really excited. Yeah.
Yeah, we had no idea. It's like John, like he was like every time I first did, the first thing I did for him was what was meant to be just a coaster. They're opening up the brewery, and then they ended up using it on like their window and making shirts or something like that, and making some other things. And then eventually he asked me if I would do his first beer label, and he had no idea that the success that they would gain from it. Like, I just knew that every time I came in and visited them to talk about sketches and whatever, he was always like tinkering in the brew room. Like, he was like, "Man, we're close. I think it's going to be something really special." And turns out it was,
Right. Yeah. It's pretty cool if you've never used before, but there's the Wayback Machine. It's part of archive.org, which is, to the storing of data and kind of historically. It's good for live music and other entities, but they have what they call the Wayback Machine, and you can go back to their website, going back to 2007, 2008, they take different, web crawls, I guess. I'm not as tech savvy in that area, but it's really funny.
Yeah.
It's funny. You can see the blog post where they announce that they're going to sell the bottles, and people are asking why. I thought you said we're never going to be able to do that because then you can't control it, and you can just kind of see these small snapshots of the evolution of what is now,
like advancements. Right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Wow, that's awesome. I've never heard of that thing.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. It's pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I read your bio, was on the website, and for folks that want to check it out, danblakeslee.com. We'll have links up on the site.
Yeah. So basically I grew up in southern Maine, and then went to art school like after high school down in Baltimore, and sort of like once I graduated from there, it's kind of funny this sort of like the evolution of how I started to make like beer labels was actually going way back, like in 1994. I had been there was so much art that I had to do at art school for all these different projects and classes and everything. I was so burnt out. And I told myself after art school, I'm like, man, I need a break. And 2 years before that, my sophomore year, I started playing music, and I found that it really helped me get through the rest of school. Otherwise, I just would have been freaking out. Like there was just so much, the workload was so like astounding what they had you do. And, but it's good because it prepared me for what I'd be doing now. Back then, like doing 8 hours of drawing in a day, like what the heck? That's crazy, and now it's like, oh, it's regular. It's like, preparing me for, what's to come. And now, and then, so after art school, I actually ended up playing a lot of shows. I started, I was working at a lobster restaurant and playing shows. And I decided to take a break from doing artwork altogether. But in order to play shows, I had to make posters. So I was making posters for these concerts that I was doing, and I was doing one at the Portsmouth Brewery in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where they have Smutty Nose, and the owners of Smutty Nose saw it, and they asked me to do some beer labels. So I did some beer labels for them for their small batch brews, like early on, back in probably 96, maybe something like that. And that's how I got back into doing artwork.
Okay. So you've been a little burnt out with school having to just kind of create for a deadline and not create for the kind of the art or the passion of it.
The joy of, yeah, exactly.
Okay. I've been to the Portsmouth brew house. My sister lived for,
oh, nice.
Yeah, for a period of time. My sister lived in New Hampshire, and we would go up there and have a good old time. It was a good spot, and they always had the smaller New Hampshire or local New England breweries that we couldn't get in Connecticut or where we're originally from in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So that's great. So you playing shows kind of forced you to self-promote and create some of your own materials.
Right. Yeah, and it was nice because like what I like about what they had me do, they let me have great freedom in doing the artwork. And same with John from the Alchemist, John and Jen. They had their input, but they wanted me to feel free, like to have like creative expression. So it was it was really crazy at first when John was explaining what he wanted me to do with the the hops. He said, I want the hops like exploding out of his head, like kind of like ripping his like skull apart almost. And I took it literal. So the first drawing was really kind of graphic, like really pretty out there graphically. And he goes, okay, tone that back a notch and have it, and then he, gave me some art direction, and we ended up going in the direction of where the label is now.
That's pretty great. Yeah. Good, but I think you're going to scare some of our patrons away with that one. Yeah. Now
right, exactly. Yeah. But that's what he said he wanted me to do. And then I showed him and he's like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. More hops. Yeah. Less blood. How would you describe your aesthetic? Like for the non-arts, art, person, somebody looking at your work, how would you describe your aesthetic or the medium that you typically use?
It's so funny. That's a question that comes up often. It's like, I'll meet someone and, if I, they're like, oh, well, what kind of art do you do? Or what does it look like? I'm like, oh my God, that's like the biggest question. It's like, but I would say it's sort of, whimsical, dreamlike, sort of imagery that's sort of, I'm still like stuck on this. It's like one of the hardest things to describe, but it's like my favorite mediums are like, first and foremost, I focus primarily on drawing and etching.
Yeah, that's what I would have said. Yeah, is that?
Yeah, and it's sort of like, I like having the essence of like, early 1900s poster art. That's sort of like, I really, I gravitate towards that style of like really stark imagery. And, but I also like a lot of little hidden details. That's one of my things.
Oh, like some Easter eggs?
And I like
some Easter eggs?
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I noticed, a strong black and white theme, I thought, which I personally am a big fan of. I really like that. I think, it's amazing what you can do, with those just two colors with the shadows and shading, and to the etching, as you were saying, you can definitely see that. And, a lot of that has an old kind of throwback, which, to your music, if a tie-in, has like a folk overtone to it, a little Americana.
Right, yeah.
Americana.
Sort of like, yeah. I feel like the music as well as the art sort of has this folk rustic feel to it. I don't like, some art that I do, there's like some clean lines, but I like it to have like a little loose energy to it.
Yeah, I think it's,
I think that's far as the music, definitely like folk Americana sort of genre, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a throwback to the period where, like even the 60s and 70s where poster art, was such an important, it was just an important thing. I was, with the auction shows where they go and people bring their junk, and there was one episode recently where a woman had found her brother's posters from like the 60s and 70s from the Fillmore, and
right.
It was amazing. So it definitely has that throwback. Some of them have, I think like an angelic and some mermaids, so they have a little bit of, lore to them.
Right.
Now, do you have an idea in mind? So you have like a show coming up, or is it more you have a sketchbook and you're always just kind of creating?
Well, I'm sort of. It kind of depends. Like certain shows, I'll make it based on either, something to do with the show itself, or the bands that are playing, or the town, or is it in a seaside town, or is it or a mix of a bunch of things. But I do also have a sketchbook that I sort of like, all these different ideas are stored away in. And if I feel like I can't come up with something then I'll dig in the sketchbook and find something in there to use. But I don't do as many show posters as I used to, because I'm up to about 600 of them now.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been recycling a lot of them, because, I mean, it takes just so much time to draw one. And it's like, I already, I'm not getting paid for it.
Right.
And Lord knows that most of the shows I'm not getting paid that great either. So I'm like, I'll just reuse this old poster.
You have to be efficient.
But even though I'm trying to take that up a notch.
Right.
Or several notches.
Right. Yes.
But yeah, no, I know. Yeah. So I do have like a batch of like 50 to 100 posters that I have done in the past that I've been reusing a lot.
Okay.
So, but I try to reuse posters that people might have not seen for like 15 years or 20 years.
I think that's just impressive in and of itself. When you look at your timeline, it's to be doing it for 20 years. I think that in and of itself is pretty amazing.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's crazy when I had the realization that it was like my 20th year playing music and doing artwork. It sort of like kind of knocked me out. I'm like, oh my God, I've survived 2 decades. I'm broke, but I'm happy as hell.
Yeah, I think that. I mean? Yeah, well, happiness is kind of it's a term that you can define differently. So that's impressive. In a previous life, in a previous life, I was involved with radio, and from there, met some great bands, and I was only able to stick in the game for 5 years, so 20 years is amazing.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So with a lot of these being hand drawn, with now technology's a lot more art friendly. Is it do you scan them in, and do you use any programs, Illustrator or Photoshop, or are you still a traditionalist?
Yeah, I still always do the original, but by hand with like ink or etching materials. But then I definitely do like scan them in, especially when I like colorize them. I'll scan them in and then make the separations, and then hand make silkscreen posters.
Okay.
So there's still like I feel that long ago, my dad, who's always been a computer savvy guy. Like he knew about the internet in like 1979. It's really bizarre. Like he was telling me, not 79, no, like 87, something like that. Anyway, early on, before most people even knew it was out there, and he was trying to get me to help me in the way of like, it might be easier if you want to transfer your artwork to the computer to try this, drawing program on the computer. And I just couldn't, I just didn't feel right about it, and I just for me, it's like I have a lot of friends that use those to do quick sketches, and, this way they can just it's already in the computer. You don't have to scan it and everything. But for whatever reason, I like to have the physical art in front of me.
Yeah, I think it makes total. Yeah, it's amazing to see where people go, because now they have a lot more options. But yeah, it's like still, I think it's even rare. It's like recording on analog versus digital. Some folks still, it's a lot more difficult to do and less takes. But I think that you still see people who don't want it to compromise them. And it's not to say that digitally is worse, but I think that's
right.
It's all these little decisions you get to make as an artist, and so I think that's pretty awesome.
It's kind of like one of my favorite things, and I learned this. I'm glad I learned this. Probably like 15 years ago. It's like one of my favorite things about recorded music is when you can hear like the little mistakes or the little nuances. You know what I mean? That aren't like, so you can tell it's like real.
Right.
and I sort of like, I remember on my very first album, I was so picky, like, oh man, like that string buzzed or whatever, or like,
right.
I could hear like this, like something in the background. I would recut it. And now it's like, that's one of my favorite things. Like, I have this album that was recorded in a barn in Maine, and the owner of the barn was sitting there watching us. There were a bunch of people in lawn chairs watching me and my band, and we were telling everyone, okay, everyone be really quiet. We're going to do a take. We did a take, and the guy who owned the barn, his dog walked by, and he just like patted him on the back, and it was right next to one of the microphones, and we were like, what the hell are you doing? And then that ended up being the best take. We were like, oh my God, that's perfect. Exactly. Him doing that added so much to the music.
Right.
I feel like those little mistakes in having something be authentic, and instead of like, trying to record everything to a click track. Not that that's a bad thing either, depending on the kind of music you do, but I like it when it has like, it's not so shiny. I like it when it's genuine.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite bands is like The Band, and that's how I always think about it. And I like.
Oh man, exactly.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're recording in the same room at the same time.
That's exactly what I was going to say. When there's like just some, doesn't have to be, it's not classic where it's one mic style, but just where, they're all in the same room. It's not, everyone does their takes separately and they show up to the studio by themselves.
Right.
I really like that. Yeah. I definitely agree. Or when you get like a good, good laugh or just kind of something, you can keep it in there,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I record my last couple albums, is everyone in the same room at the same time. And the guy, my one that's coming out later this year, the engineer was like, okay, well, since we're having drums in the same room and accordion and piano and bass, like it's gonna come through the vocal mic. So I'll make a glass barrier between you and everyone else. And I'm like, nope, let it bleed. So I said, because, and you can, if you solo the mic, you can hear the other instruments in it, but it didn't, to me, I wanted that, hey, we're all in the same room, kind of like a rehearsal.
Right.
And just playing. And I told the guys in my band, I said, don't play it safe. Like, the safety is off. I said, I want you guys to do what you do, and let's just, play these songs, and, so really fun to record that way.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times you hear this band and then you go to see them live and it's like, oh, is that? You sure that's the same band I just saw? Because it's
right,
like
exactly.
It's too pristine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're afraid you're gonna break it.
Right, exactly.
All right, what do you think? So far, so good. Part 1 in the books. This is the 16-ounce canvas, The Art of Craft Beer. Thank you for checking out the podcast. Hope you're enjoying, learn a little more about Dan, learn about Heady Topper. Makes you want to grab a couple Headies. Drink it in the can. And don't be a D-bag. That's Dan right there in the background. Check out some of his music. Learn a little bit more about his upcoming album, The Alleywalkers. DanBlakeslee.com. Head on over to 16ozcanvas.com. You'll find out more information about Dan, his band, and all the great links to follow along. Make sure to shoot Dan a note. Let him know what you think of his interview. We're just going to keep this thing going. We got part 2 coming up. We're going to learn a little bit more about Dan teaming up with John and the Alchemist, learn what he's up to, and give you a little more insight into the man and the artist, Dan Blakeslee. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Part 2 is underway. Cheers.
How did you come, being from Maine, come to meet John and were you just a regular at the brew pub, or it did?
No. So it's kind of crazy. Like, I was playing a show up in Burlington, Vermont, and I was sitting that day. Whenever I play a show up in that area, I always go out for a couple of days and hang out with friends, and I make artwork up there. And I was sitting in a cafe making one of my show posters, and I felt someone like looking over my shoulder. And there was this guy like sitting at the next table over, and he kept looking over my shoulder. And then he just said to me, "Hey, would you ever, want to make art for my brewery?" I was like, "Heck yeah!" So
done.
That's how it happened.
That's excellent.
Right.
So and that was good. Then you had more. You had reasons to keep coming back to Vermont, right? You had to keep booking some more shows to show what you worked on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So how long of a process was that from when you first met till the final product?
You mean for the first piece of artwork?
Right. Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, from your style, there's the one that says like the Alchemist, right? Is that you also?
Yeah. Yep. The very first one I did, there's a guy in a lab coat.
Right.
That says the Alchemist. That one was probably, over the course of like a few weeks between like showing them the sketches and reworking it, and then scanning it and cleaning it up and everything. But it's like probably, I'd say about 15 hours in time, something like that, or maybe 20.
Okay. Now, is that
that
character?
Takes a while.
Yeah. Oh, is that character? He looks similar to the Focal Banger guy. Is that the same guy, or they look kind of similar?
Yes, that's what he wanted. Yep. Yeah. He wanted to get back to that guy.
That's pretty great. So, how from the process of it being on the can, because it's, in a way, it's a label, but I really like it because it uses the base of the aluminum, and then it's printed on top of it, which is pretty unique.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he was really specific about that for that can especially, and I can't remember. I think. Oh, you know what it is? I drew it like, knowing that was, gonna happen. In the way of like, when you see the other one, it's on a silver can,
right?
And I'm trying. I don't have them right in front of me, but yeah, I had that in mind when I drew it. He told me, what he was looking for. So
that's excellent. Now,
yeah.
Do you name your, like, do they have character names, like, just to be hokey?
No, not that I know
of. All right.
Maybe they've named them.
No, yeah, who knows? So now, when Heady was first released, it came out in a bottle. So did you do a label on the bottle first? Is that the first?
You know what? I didn't even know that it came out in a bottle form first.
Yeah, again, I remember I've heard I've heard stories, and collectors try to get them. I think it's a pretty tough get. I think there was only 500 or 600 bottles, and then I think that was the first kind of
maybe they just did like quick photocopied labels or something, or not photocopied, but like maybe they just produced a bunch of labels until they got the cans up and going.
Yeah. Good old, yeah. It was, it was on the Wayback Machine. So I'll have to. It was interesting. I mean, I've heard that, but it was interesting to see John write it in the first person and just kind of explaining to their community, their crowd, the regulars, that what they were doing. It seemed to shake things up a little bit.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah, I wish I had one of those bottles.
Yeah, right. That's what I was thinking. I was figuring I could sweet talk you after we finish here. But if you don't have one, then we'll see. Yeah. So was it like a smaller canvas, or how large was the original? Was it? You know?
The originals were about like maybe 8x9 or something like that. Pretty on smaller scale because I was using a fine point pen to do the art. But I think they're both about the same size.
Okay. Yeah, they're pretty.
Yeah.
So was that a first for you? Kind of delving in. Well, you done the Smutty Nose, but in the packaged goods of that nature.
Yeah, well, I did a label for Smutty Nose's sister brewery out in Northampton, Mass, too.
Okay.
Early on, and that was a full color label, and that was one of the first ones that was more mass produced. But I don't know if they have that beer anymore. But yeah, this was the first one that I did that was on a can.
Yeah, looking back when the cans, I mean, there was when I got into craft beer trading, that was like the can, like that was the end all be all. So, was there a point when you realized like how crazy it was that it was kind of this big hunt that folks were going up to Vermont just to get the Heady Topper cans?
You know what? It's so funny. Like like the year that it came out, like I'm trying to remember what year it did come out. I mean, maybe 2004, maybe later. God, I can't remember. No, it's got to be like 2007, maybe. But anyway, yeah, when a friend of mine showed it to me, they saw it in Forbes magazine. Was it Forbes? Man, God, I think it was. No, it wasn't in Forbes magazine. I can't remember. Some magazine they showed me it was like the number one rated craft beer in America. I was like, what the hell? Like, and I had no news prior to that. I hadn't seen the rise to that. You know, I just I did the artwork, and I think that year I was moving a couple times and playing a bunch of shows, and just didn't, watch, the progress. And then all of a sudden, it was like someone told me. I was like, "Holy smokes!"
That's pretty amazing. Yeah,
no idea.
I thought they
were kidding me.
I
thought they were pulling my leg.
Some good old fake news. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So have you been to the new location then?
No, I haven't. I'm making my way up there on next Friday to play a show, and I'm certainly gonna come through and check it out.
Yeah, we only drove by when it was during construction a couple months prior to opening, and it was pretty amazing, and the art up there it's really incredible.
Nice. I heard that they got the same person that originally did their tanks to make some more tank art, because that was one of the craziest things that was like lost in the flood or something like that. Was those tanks, or they got destroyed or something? I don't know. But I remember the first time I went in there, when I saw whoever painted those tanks, it was just brilliant. It was so cool.
Yeah,
really like impressive art.
Yeah, I've seen. Jess Grandma is their art director, and she has some.
Yep.
Just really vivid, great stuff. So I'm hoping to go up there in a couple of weeks, but it's really everything I've seen online, which never does justice, but it's definitely been impressive.
Right.
So, as a traveling musician, troubadour, what's your kind of go-to style of beer? Since that's how we found you. What are you drinking these days?
You know what? Mine's actually root beer, because I've never had a beer in my life.
What?
Which is weird, because I know. But people are always taken back by that. I've never had alcohol in my life. I'm 45, and I've never I had like 7 different sips of alcohol growing up, and I didn't like any of them. And so I told John, I said, well, if there's ever a day that I'm gonna ever think about having a beer, yours will be the first. And I'm sure I'll be knocked out by it, because I've heard it's potent.
Yeah, if it's your first beer, I mean, it's not boozy. It's really, it's really refreshing. So,
Right.
Yeah, maybe get a taster glass. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Excellent. And so with Focal Banger, how did that come? Because that was, they originally were doing just the cans with the stickers, and that had just
that's what they were trying to figure out. Like, I still do, like, I haven't been on their website in a while or Facebook to see where that's going. They had asked me about doing the artwork for it, and I was like in a heavy touring schedule, and I said, all right, I won't be able to do it for like a half year or something like that, because I was recording and then doing some artwork. So they had some stickers that they made up in the meantime, and I was so happy once we finally like nailed down the design and got that into production. So
that's pretty impressive. That's another, that's a great compliment that they were, willing to wait. And I think that was during the expansion time.
Yeah. It was also like at the time where they were sort of like, they were like through the roof with all the Heady stuff. And I was like moving that year or something, and I had like a ton of different art projects that I couldn't, my fingers were constantly in motion, like, between making artwork, playing shows, like, booking shows and, writing emails and stuff like that. So it was like, I can only do so many things at once. And so there was definitely a little hiatus, and I told him but I said, I'm committed to definitely doing it. So I think what we had done sketches early on, but I told him I wouldn't be able to actually attack it till a little bit later.
Well,
but
the sketches were well received then. Yeah, it's definitely
yeah.
It's kind of like the yin and yang, of the Alchemist beers, with the the opposite, one being black heavy and the other one being the silver aluminum.
Right.
Yeah. Previously, you could only get it at the local restaurants and bars. So when they opened up the new facility and you could get legitimate quantities of it, I think people are still kind of flipping out about it.
Right. I think is this one sold in other states, or have they done that yet?
Every once in a while they'll send some down. I've seen it pop up in New York City, but it's few and far between. They still
right. I couldn't remember. I thought I had heard about them possibly maybe someday, like having it, for sale in other places than Vermont. But I couldn't. That might have just been like, like someone talking that didn't, have the right info or something. But I can't remember. I thought I had heard something like that along the line.
As of right now, what I do like is, even with the expansion, they're still cognizant of those, smaller shops, around Vermont who helped to, make them what they were when they decided to distribute. And so I think they made sure that their loyal customers were still, getting a fair allotment, because that was a good source for their business, which I think is very, very Vermont. And I think that's one of the things I really like, about the brewery in general.
Yeah. Agreed.
On the can, it says, "Don't be a D-bag." Is that, obviously,
Right. A douchebag. That was John's.
Okay. I was curious. We were curious about that. If that was, maybe one of your little hidden gems there.
No.
Well, I appreciate your time. You said you have a new record it's coming out?
Yeah. It's coming out in August this year.
Okay, excellent. What's
Yeah.
what's the record? Do you have a title for it yet?
Yeah. The title is called The Alley Walker, and it's got me and the full band on it.
Oh, excellent. And you recorded where did you record?
Recorded it in New Hampshire, in a warehouse by a waterfall.
Oh wow!
So it was nice to take little breaks between recording and go out to the waterfall and just kind of sit and take that in, before going back to do another round.
Now, what's the process for you? Do you have all the songs before you show up, or is it?
Yeah. No, yeah. I definitely, yeah. I sort of the way that the band and I have done the last couple records that we recorded together was to have all the songs ready to go and then rehearse them like crazy, like a few times a week leading up to, like a month or two leading up to the to recording, and then just nail it out, so they're really like, so we have them down when we go there, so we're not like, we've done our homework when we get to the studio.
Excellent.
That's sort of how I like to do it. And I usually like to record like 15 songs and boil it down to 10. This way it's like, the other songs, okay, they're recorded, which is good. They live on, but I only want to put the best stuff out there. That's sort of how I like to do it, I guess.
Now, is that process hard?
Even though I'd love to have all the songs.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It is. Yeah. Trying to figure out which one's okay. It's not making the cut, for whatever reason.
Now, is there a common theme for each album? How do you approach that?
Well, this one was actually, this is kind of like a little story in itself. It's like, I think about 13 years ago, I ran into an old friend of mine from art school that he was my longtime like musical companion down at art school. And he was an amazing guitar player. And I always remember how he had like all this recording equipment in his room, like when we were at art school and everything. And he was really sort of like, he was kind of a gearhead. And he's from Kentucky. And randomly I was driving around Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and there was this car that was like, following me every direction I went. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go in this weird little alleyway road. Like, who would go on this thing? Who would follow me? I just thought it was just coincidence. And then they followed me in there. I got out of the car. I'm like, what the hell is your problem? And out hops my friend Ron from art school, and we I don't know how the hell he knew it was me from the back of my head, and we hadn't seen each other in 10 years. And we started talking, and he asked me if I'd been, writing songs or recording. And I said, man, I haven't been recording. I just didn't have the dough or the time or whatever. And he's like, okay, come up to my place in Portland, Maine, and we'll record some of the songs. I have a microphone and computer and like whatever. And I go up there forgetting how much of a gearhead he is. He has all this like vintage, amazing equipment, and it was much more advanced than he had described to me. And before we were to record, I said, "Man, I don't know what to record because I have 45 songs that I wrote that are unrecorded. Like I have no idea what to pick." And he quickly thought, and he put 4 pieces of paper in front of me. Blank pieces of paper, and he said, take 12 songs or however many and put them on each piece of paper, and that sort of like work well together, the songs. And he goes, call it an album. So the first piece of paper was an album called Lincoln Street Roughs, and it was the first one that he and I did together. Then the second piece of paper was called Tatnick Tales, and it was a country folk record, and we recorded that one. And then the next one was called Ode to the Tangling Wind, and I had also written out a piece of paper for this one called The Alley Walker, which was going to be a more electric, a little more electric sounding album. And by the time I get to the fourth sheet, it had been like 10 years. And I realized, I was like, oh man, some of these songs, like it was so crazy that I hadn't recorded any of these songs because I'd been waiting to put them out on this one album. And so it's kind of like a throwback of like newer and older songs. So it's sort of like an eclectic folk record. It's acoustic based, but it has a lot of electric elements in it.
Now, how many pieces are in your band?
So when we play out live, it's 4. But on the record, we have electric guitar. We usually don't play electric when we play out. On the album, I have electric guitar. We have accordion on there, piano, drums, upright bass, organ, piano, lap steel, pedal steel guitar. So it's a whole bunch of different instruments.
That sounds great. Now, how many do you play multiple instruments on the record, or I would say no, right?
No, not on this one. I did that on my last one. But this one, I mainly did just guitar, acoustic guitar, and vocals, and some electric.
Okay, so folks can look for that on the website.
Oh yeah. It's coming out in August.
Excellent. Yeah, a couple of your records I was listening to them the last couple of days are up on Spotify. So it's
cool.
Yeah, that was cool. I was checking that out before. It was let me see if I can pull up what I was listening to. Let me see. Good old technology. Yeah, it's
right.
Tatnick Tales and Lincoln Street Roughs.
Oh yeah. That's the barn one.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you listen to Tatnick Tales with headphones, we didn't use any reverb, no production. We put the raw takes on the album because we want it to sound like you're in a barn. So it's just all that anything that sounds like reverb is just natural from the wood in the barn.
I like that. Yeah, the locations of your recordings are unique too. So I think it definitely gives it a little extra personality.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate your time. I really.
I
enjoyed talking to you
at all.
So.
Yeah, same here.
So what type of what artists do you listen to for kind of inspiration? Like, what are you listening to for inspiration type of stuff?
Oh man, there's so many. It's like it's funny. But I mean, I can definitely give you a couple. But it's funny. So my dad's a jazz piano player, and so I grew up on listening to jazz. But then he was also in a country band. He played drums in a country band. He was a multi-instrumentalist, still is, and then my older brother got me into breakdancing when I was in 5th grade, and so I was a little breaker listening to Run DMC. And then my older brother introduced me to punk rock in 7th grade, and I was like, now that's a calling. It was an absolute calling to me, even though you don't hear it in my music, but it's like one of my favorite bands from that era was like Violent Femmes, even though they're not like straight up punk by any reason. It's kind of like a hybrid of a bunch of different things. But I would say now I mean, my influences are pretty broad, but I love. I'll tell you ones that people would know is like Bob Dylan, David Bowie, a guy named Michael Hurley, he's one of my favorite kind of quirky underground underdog folk hero of mine. Mississippi John Hurt, amazing blues guy, and then I like things like Vampire Weekend.
All right,
I guess that it's a little more pop, but yeah, kind of quite a broad spectrum.
Yeah, I that's what I like. I think that music is always, like you're saying, you remember different points of your life, and it's like the soundtrack, right, for your life. You remember, okay, this song reminds me of where I was and what I was doing. I definitely have my, hip hop and a little more aggressive rap phase as a youngster. So I definitely
Beastie Boys, god dang.
Yeah, I saw them at one of the early Lollapaloozas. That was pretty life changing. So yeah, I agree.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty sick.
Cool.
Yeah, it was them, Tribe, P-Funk, Smashing Pumpkins, The Breeders. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Oh my God, The Breeders! God, I love that band.
Yeah, I was like 14 or 15. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and it was like a full day of just nonstop music, and so here we are, many moons later.
Right. And Fugazi, I love that band.
You are all over the place. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Yep. But I'm not a disco fan.
Yeah. Well, I think so. Yeah, I think with your dad would probably have disowned you before you discovered the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, you can hear hints of disco in Bowie and like Blondie, but I love them, the both of them, but I just don't like disco. No Bee Gees, sorry.
Yeah.
No Hustle.
Yeah, good. We can be friends. But because I think Bowie kind of took that disco era, and that the glamour, but he did not. He chose the right path, so it worked out well for everybody.
Very much.
All right, Dan. Well, I wish you the best of luck on your shows coming up, and I'll be in touch.
And that's a wrap. Episode 1 is in the books, and it feels good. I want to take a quick moment to thank Dan for coming on the show, being our first guest. Just to recap, check out Dan on his website, danblakeslee.com. We'll have all the links up on 16ozcanvas.com. Follow Dan on Instagram or head on over to pledgemusic.com. Learn more about his upcoming album, Alley Walker. It was great to have Dan. I think it was a good way to kick off the show. We're really excited what we have upcoming for you. Like I said, this was episode 1. Up next on episode 2, we have another great artist from Minnesota, David Paul Seymour. David does work with another great brewery, Burial Beer Company, out of Asheville, North Carolina. So we're going to give you a little preview of that episode. Remember, tell your friends. Check us out on the web. 16-ounce canvas, the art of craft beer. Thanks for being a part of the project. Keep in touch. Cheers, my friends. Until next time. And here's a preview of episode 2, featuring David Paul Seymour. How does a guy in Minnesota come to team up with Burial down in North Carolina?
The guy he's like their head brewmaster, Tim Gormley. He is into heavy music, and somewhere along the line started following me on social media. And one day it was just like this flurry of activity. He commented on something I posted and tagged in the other two from the brewery, the other two owners, Jess and Doug, and said, "This is the guy I was telling you about." And you get a lot of comments and things, when you get to where I'm at, where, sometimes it just escapes your radar, but somehow I was like, well, what's that? I just happened to pick up on it and looked at them and realized that, they were with a brewery, and probably within the same day, I got either an email or a phone call or something from those guys. And, they wanted to go for it. And, I tell people, probably and this is part of the answer to your question. I tell people that I'm really proud of being a part of Burial and their kind of unfolding of their legacy and history, because, those guys were strictly just a tap room when they first came around. And when we got together, they said, look, we got a loan. We're looking to expand our operation. We're going to start canning and bottling our beer. And, we feel really confident about where we're going. And, I got on board with it's one thing to come along or get picked up or whatever, by somebody who's already established and kind of has, something going that is recognizable, i.e. a brand, in the public eye. And then you got to fall into that. And, hopefully it's a good fit. For us and our relationship, it was exactly at a time where these guys were just about to take that turn on the flight of stairs and go up a whole nother level. And, I came along at a time where I'm proud that I really helped them to define what the look of Burial beer is. And, I helped them with, not just, hey, here's cool art for the can, here's your check, thank you, we'll be in touch for the next one. It's been so much of a collaborative team, family spirit kind of thing since day one.